did from the coronation, but nobody, let alone Kate, curtsied to Queen Camilla.
A shimmering state banquet at Buckingham Palace was supposed to show royal perfection. It was supposed to project complete family unity. Instead, it became a battlefield. A quiet revolution erupted inside the monarchy. Princess Catherine did the unthinkable. She calmly overrode a direct command from Queen Camilla. Courtiers were left gasping. Foreign dignitaries stood completely stunned. This was no accidental mistake. It was a calculated display of soft power. It signaled a dramatic shift inside the royal household. King Charles watched in silence. Prince William stood firmly behind his wife. The true balance of royal power has now shifted forever. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we reveal the thrilling inside story of Catherine's royal power shift. The sparks fly at Buckingham Palace. The grand ballroom of Buckingham Palace was bathed in gold light. Giant crystal chandeliers shimmered above hundreds of distinguished guests. The air was thick with expectation. High-ranking diplomats, foreign heads of state, and senior members of the royal family gathered for one of the most important diplomatic events of the year. The table was dressed in priceless silver gilt. Every wineglass was placed with mathematical precision. Every floral arrangement met centuries of palace standard. This was royal theater at its absolute highest level. Everything was designed to project absolute unity, tradition, and strength. Queen Camilla sat at the center of the head table. She wore a majestic royal gown, paired with historic crown jewels that reflected the glow of the ballroom lamps. Next to her sat King Charles III, appearing regal yet tired under the heavy burden of his royal duties. Further along the table sat Prince William and Princess Catherine. Catherine was a portrait of breathtaking elegance. She wore the legendary lover's knot tiara. Her emerald velvet gown swept the polished floor. She smiled warmly, conversing with foreign dignitaries with effortless grace. To the casual observer, the evening was a complete success. The laughter was polite, and the toasts were flawless. The classical orchestra played softly from the balcony above. But beneath the surface of this gilded celebration, tensions were quietly boiling over. The conflict began over a delicate issue of diplomatic protocol. During state banquets, every movement is strictly controlled by royal staff. The timing of speeches, the order of toasts, and the precise moment dignitaries are escorted to private reception rooms follow a rigid schedule. Queen Camilla has spent months establishing her authority over these formal events. She relies heavily on traditional protocol officers and prefers strict hierarchy. She expects every command to be executed without question. As the main dinner service drew to a close, a minor diplomatic complication arose. A senior foreign ambassador and his spouse were scheduled to be escorted to the private drawing room for a high-level briefing. The ambassador was an influential ally whose country held vital trade and security ties with Great Britain. However, the ambassador's spouse was experiencing mild fatigue and requested a brief pause before surviving the long, grand corridors of the palace. Queen Camilla noticed the minor delay from across the head table. She beckoned a senior palace usher. In a quiet but firm voice, she issued a direct command. The schedule must not hold up. The diplomat and his wife were to be moved immediately according to the original timeline. The protocol was absolute. There would be no deviations. The royal schedule belonged to the sovereign and the queen consort. The usher bowed respectfully and turned to execute the queen's order. That was the exact moment Princess Catherine stepped in. Catherine had been speaking directly with the ambassador's spouse earlier in the evening. She recognized the genuine discomfort and stress on the visitor's face. More importantly, Catherine understood something that traditional protocol officers often overlook. Modern diplomacy requires empathy, not just rigid rules. Forcing a guest into a public walk while distressed would cause humiliation. It would damage a crucial diplomatic relationship. Without raising her voice, Princess Catherine signaled to the usher. She placed a gentle hand on the usher's arm. Her gesture was subtle, but her presence was unmistakable. In a clear, serene, and calm tone, Catherine issued a counter-directive. She requested that the usher arrange for a private resting suite immediately adjacent to the ballroom. Catherine asked that hot tea be brought to the couple. She instructed that the formal walk be delayed by 10 minutes to allow the couple to recover in total privacy. The senior usher froze in his tracks. He stood paralyzed between the direct order of Queen Camilla and the firm instruction of the Princess of Wales. The air in the head table suddenly turned ice cold. Queen Camilla turned her head slowly toward Catherine. Her eyes narrowed. The tension in the immediate vicinity of the head table was palpable. Royal aides stood still. Foreign diplomats sitting nearby paused mid-sentence. For a brief, terrifying 5 seconds, complete silence fell over the top section of the room. Everyone in that room knew the stakes. Overriding the Queen Consort in public is a cardinal sin in royal protocol. It goes against centuries of palace hierarchy. It is a direct challenge to authority. Yet Catherine did not flinch. She did not lower her eyes. Instead, she maintained her calm, radiant expression. She turned back to the foreign ambassador with a warm, reassuring smile, effortlessly continuing her conversation in fluent, elegant tones. She did not act out of anger or disrespect. She acted with the unshakable confidence of a woman who knows her position, her duty, and her future. Prince William, sitting just 2 seats away, did not intervene to correct his wife. Instead, he leaned back slightly in his chair, nodded subtly to the usher, and reinforced Catherine's order with a simple look of total approval. King Charles saw the entire exchange. The king looked down at his plate, choosing not to overrule his daughter-in-law. The usher made his decision. He followed Catherine's command. The foreign ambassador was visibly moved by Catherine's kindness and quick thinking. The potential diplomatic embarrassment was entirely avoided. The evening proceeded smoothly, but the damage to the old power dynamic was already done. Catherine had just performed a masterclass in soft authority. She did not shout or throw a spectacle. She simply took command of the room and proved that modern empathy triumphs over cold, rigid protocol. As the state dinner drew to a close and guests began to depart, courtiers whispered in hushed tones behind closed doors. A line had been crossed. A quiet revolution had taken place right in front of the elite of British society. What made Catherine take such a massive, deliberate risk? To find the answer, we must step behind the velvet curtains and examine the bitter, deepening rift that has been building between the Queen and the future Queen for months. Behind protocol walls, the deepening rift. On paper, Catherine and Camilla serve the same crown. Both represent the House of Windsor. Both are dedicated to supporting their husbands and serving the British public. But beneath the polished surface, 2 entirely different worlds are colliding inside the royal household. Queen Camilla represents the traditional palace establishment. Her approach to royal duty was shaped by decades of traditional protocol. She believes that authority is maintained through strict adherence to hierarchy, grand precedent, and unyielding formality. For Camilla, the rules of the royal household are sacrosanct. Orders flow down from the top. Staff obey without question. Guests adapt to the palace schedule, not the other way around. In Camilla's view, any compromise on protocol threatens to erode the majestic mystique of the sovereign. She fought long and hard to secure her place alongside King Charles. Her journey from public outcast to crowned Queen Consort required intense perseverance, absolute loyalty to the crown, and rigorous discipline. Having achieved her position, she holds tightly to the reins of formal authority within the royal household. Princess Catherine, however, sees the monarchy through an entirely different lens. Catherine represents the modern era. She spent the first 20+ years of her life as a private citizen. She understands how the outside world functions. She knows that modern respect cannot be demanded through ancient rules alone. It must be earned through empathy, genuine connection, and accessible grace. Catherine views her role as a bridge between ancient tradition and the 21st century public. She knows that rigid protocol can make the royal family appear distant, uncaring, and out of touch. Where Camilla sees rule following as strength, Catherine sees flexibility and warmth as true power. In the weeks leading up to the state dinner, this fundamental clash of philosophies reached a boiling point behind closed doors. Planning a major diplomatic state banquet takes months of painstaking preparation. Every detail is debated. Seating arrangements, jewelry loans from the royal collection, guest arrival sequences, and private reception schedules require dozens of high-level meetings between royal aides. Insiders report that friction began early in the planning phase. Queen Camilla's office insisted on total control over all diplomatic interactions. Her aides drafted a rigid timeline that treated foreign dignitaries like pieces on a chessboard. timing was prioritized over individual guest comfort. Traditional hierarchy was emphasized at every turn. Catherine's team quietly raised concerns. The Princess of Wales pointed out that several international guests were older diplomats navigating complex travel schedules. She suggested incorporating brief, informal rest pauses between major protocol milestones. She recommended allowing royal family members greater flexibility to host guests in smaller, private settings off the main ballroom floor. Camilla rejected those suggestions. The Queen Consort made it clear that her office held final authority over palace state functions. Protocols established during previous reigns would be strictly maintained. She expected the Prince and Princess of Wales to follow the schedule without alteration. The disagreement extended beyond mere scheduling. It touched on symbolic power within the palace. Reports surfaced that tension arose regarding access to the royal collection. The Queen Consort traditionally has primary selection rights over historic tiaras, necklaces, and brooches for state occasions. While Catherine has always been respectful of palace tradition, observers noticed subtle microaggressions in how access to historic heirlooms was managed leading up to the event. For months, Princess Catherine chose her battles carefully. She avoided direct public confrontation and maintained a peaceful smile during official engagements. She focused her energy on her early childhood foundation, her family, and her growing international duties. She swallowed minor slights from senior courtiers aligned with Camilla's office. But Catherine is not passive. She is a strategic thinker. She knew that allowing rigid protocol to overshadow warmth at a major diplomatic event would harm the monarchy's global standing. She waited for the right moment to make a stand, a moment where her intervention would not look like personal pride, but like leadership. When the foreign ambassador's spouse needed help at the state dinner, Catherine saw the situation clearly. This was not just a medical pause for a weary guest. It was a defining choice between cold rule enforcement and compassionate leadership. By choosing compassion, Catherine did not just help a guest. She sent a clear signal to the entire royal establishment. The future of the monarchy belongs to modern empathy, not ancient rigidity. That single action exposed a deep rift that can no longer be hidden. Courtiers who had long considered Camilla the ultimate authority in household matters were forced to recognize a new reality. How did Catherine prepare for this masterstroke? And what really happened at the banquet table during those intense 5 seconds? Get ready to find out. The clashing orders. What happened at the banquet table? To fully grasp the magnitude of what happened, we must examine the exact mechanics of the clash. A state dinner is not a casual party. It is a precise military-style operation. Every single minute is mapped out months in advance. The master of the household oversees every detail. Dozens of footmen stand at attention. Pages in livery wait for subtle signals. The atmosphere in the grand ballroom is charged with centuries of royal history. On this fateful evening, the stakes were extraordinarily high. The visiting delegation represented a key global power. International cameras were allowed inside for brief ceremonial moments. The eyes of the world were on Buckingham Palace. The head table was arranged according to strict historical precedents. Queen Camilla sat in the central throne-backed chair. King Charles sat to her right. Prince William sat near the diplomatic leader. Princess Catherine sat directly across from the senior foreign ambassador and his wife. Catherine looked radiant. Her presence commanded the room. She wore an exquisite custom gown that perfectly balanced royal glamour with regal modesty. She wore the iconic lover's knot tiara. The diamond and pearl headpiece shimmered under the golden light. Her choice of jewels was a quiet reminder of Princess Diana. It was a visual symbol of warmth, grace, and public connection. Camilla wore magnificent rubies from the royal vault. She looked imposing, formal, and stern. Her stance radiated cold authority. She carried herself as the undisputed mistress of the house. As the main course was cleared, the critical phase of the evening began. Protocol demanded that the monarch and the queen consort lead the head foreign guests into the picture gallery. This private walk allows for high-level conversations away from the main hall. Suddenly, the foreign ambassador's spouse appeared pale. The heat of the ballroom had overwhelmed her. She leaned heavily against her chair. She signaled to a junior aide that she needed a moment to catch her breath. Queen Camilla noticed the disturbance immediately. She did not ask if the guest was unwell. She did not offer a gentle smile. She saw only a break in the schedule. Camilla raised her hand slightly and beckoned the chief palace usher. Camilla spoke in a firm, low voice. She told the usher to keep the procession moving. She instructed that the ambassador and his wife be moved forward without delay. The schedule was 5 minutes behind. In Camilla's eyes, the schedule was king. To pause now would ruin the timing of the national anthems. It would disrupt the entire royal household. The chief usher bowed. He turned to carry out the Queen's command. He approached the foreign couple to ask them to step into line immediately. That was the exact instant Catherine acted. Catherine had been watching the ambassador's wife with quiet concern. She knew the woman had traveled across multiple time zones. She knew the physical toll of high-stakes diplomacy. Catherine did not hesitate. She stood up slightly from her seat. She took 3 calm, deliberate steps toward the chief usher. She spoke soft words, but her voice had an unmistakable ring of authority. Catherine told the usher to hold the procession. She instructed him to guide the visiting couple to a private anteroom adjacent to the ballroom. She asked for chilled water and hot tea to be brought immediately, and stated clearly that the formal walk would pause for 10 minutes until the guest felt completely restored. The chief usher stopped dead in his tracks. He was caught in an impossible position. To his right stood the direct command of Queen Camilla. To his left stood the counter-directive of Princess Catherine. In the royal household, a chief usher obeys the queen consort without question. But Catherine did not speak as a nervous young royal. She spoke with the quiet confidence of the future Queen of England. The silence at the head table was total. The clinking of crystal glasses stopped. King Charles looked up from his menu. His eyes darted between Camilla and Catherine. He said nothing. He chose silence. Queen Camilla's face hardened. She turned her glare directly onto Catherine. Her eyes demanded immediate submission. It was a classic royal stare down. For 5 endless seconds, 2 eras of the British monarchy clashed without a single word being shouted. Catherine held her ground. Her posture remained flawless. Her expression remained serene and warm. She did not look away or blush. She met Camilla's intense glare with absolute composure. Prince William made the decisive move. He did not raise his voice. He simply caught the chief usher's eye. William gave a single, firm nod toward Catherine. That single nod settled the debate forever. William was backing his wife completely. He was signaling that Catherine's command was the final word. The chief usher bowed deeply to Catherine. He turned away from Camilla's glare. He executed Catherine's orders to perfection. The foreign ambassador's wife was quietly escorted to the private room. She received immediate care. 10 minutes later, she returned to the ballroom feeling refreshed, deeply grateful, and relieved. The potential public health scare and diplomatic disaster had been prevented. Catherine's quick thinking saved the evening from becoming a painful viral scandal. Camilla was left stranded at the head table. She had issued a command, and it had been publicly ignored. She could not cause a public scene without destroying the dignity of the banquet. She was completely boxed in by Catherine's grace. Catherine had won the moment, but the victory went far deeper than a 10-minute delay. She proved that true authority does not come from a crown alone. True authority comes from knowing how to lead with wisdom, courage, and genuine compassion. Prince William's stance and the king's dilemma. The aftermath of that 5-second standoff reverberated far beyond the ballroom. At the center of this storm stood Prince William. For years, observers have wondered how William would survive the delicate balance between his father's wife and his own spouse. On this night, William made his stance crystal clear. His subtle nod to the chief usher was not a reckless act of defiance. It was a calculated, protective, and strategic declaration. Prince William has always been fiercely protective of Catherine. He watched his mother, Princess Diana, struggle against the cold machinery of the palace establishment. He vowed early in his adult life that he would never allow Catherine to be isolated or undermined by courtiers or senior royals. William recognizes that Catherine is not just his wife. She is the anchor of the modern monarchy. She is the public face of the royal family's future stability. By supporting Catherine at the head table, William sent a message that echoed throughout the entire palace structure. He signaled that the Prince and Princess of Wales operate as an indivisible unit. He made it obvious that any attempt to push Catherine aside or overrule her good judgment would meet his immediate resistance. William was asserting the weight of his own future reign. He was telling the establishment that the future has already arrived. For King Charles, however, the situation was far more complicated. The king found himself trapped in a painful personal and political dilemma. On one hand, Charles loves Camilla deeply. He fought for decades to secure her acceptance, both within the royal family and among the British public. He values her steadfast support and relies on her presence during his demanding schedule as monarch. Seeing his wife publicly overruled at a state event was undoubtedly uncomfortable for him. On the other hand, Charles is a pragmatist. He is deeply aware of his duty as the sovereign. His primary responsibility is to ensure the long-term survival and prosperity of the crown. Charles knows that the public affection holding the institution together rests heavily on William and Catherine. He understands that Catherine's popularity, modern touch, and global appeal are vital assets for the monarchy's survival in the 21st century. When the standoff occurred, Charles made a deliberate choice. He looked away and said nothing. By remaining silent, the king effectively allowed Catherine's decision to stand. It was a subtle, diplomatic betrayal of Camilla's strict order, but it was a necessary sacrifice to avoid a catastrophic scene in front of foreign dignitaries. Behind closed doors, the atmosphere inside the private royal apartments grew extremely tense. Reports began to circulate among senior staff of emergency late-night conversations between top royal advisors. Queen Camilla was reportedly furious. She viewed the incident not as a compassionate gesture toward a guest, but as a direct challenge to her rank as queen consort. She expressed her frustration to private secretaries and trusted aides, arguing that allowing junior royals to override the queen sets a dangerous precedent. In her view, if palace protocol can be dismissed so easily at a state banquet, the authority of the monarch and queen consort is compromised. Prince William, however, stood his ground during post-event discussions with senior palace officials. Sources indicate that William calmly reiterated the principle that drove Catherine's action. He made it clear that diplomatic flexibility and guest welfare must always take priority over rigid timelines. William pointed out that Catherine's quick thinking had saved the crown from a potential public embarrassment and secured the goodwill of an important international ally. The king found himself acting as a mediator between his wife and his heir. Charles recognized the validity of both perspectives, but he ultimately leaned toward preserving harmony and protecting the institution's public image. He quietly advised his household staff to review state event protocols, ensuring greater adaptability for international guests in the future. This quiet resolution marked a monumental turning point. Prince William had successfully demonstrated that he and Catherine possessed the influence to shape how the royal household operates. The balance of power had shifted. The king had chosen stability over strict protocol, and William had proved that his loyalty to Catherine and the future of the crown comes before all else. Public adoration versus royal hierarchy. In a modern monarchy, true power does not reside entirely in titles. It resides in public affection. Titles can be granted by royal decree, but genuine love and respect must be earned. This fundamental truth explains why Princess Catherine holds such an extraordinary position inside the royal family today. Catherine possesses a rare form of power. Royalty experts call it soft influence. It is not listed on official organizational charts inside Buckingham Palace. It cannot be dictated through protocol manuals. Yet, it is the most potent force in contemporary British society. For over a decade, Princess Catherine has consistently ranked as one of the most popular members of the royal family. Her image is associated with devotion to duty, family stability, and quiet strength. Millions of people around the world look to her as the ideal future queen. When Catherine wears a particular outfit, it sells out within minutes. When she champions an issue, public awareness skyrockets. Her presence at any official engagement guarantees overwhelming positive global media coverage. Queen Camilla, by contrast, occupies a far more complex position in the public mind. While many appreciate her dedication to King Charles and her decades of steadfast service, her journey to the title of Queen Consort was marked by deep controversy. For millions of people, memories of the past remain fresh. Camilla has worked tirelessly to build the public acceptance, but her popular appeal has natural limits. She is respected for her duty, but she does not possess the emotional bond with the public that Catherine commands. This disparity in public affection creates an undeniable reality inside the palace walls. Royal authority without public support is fragile. The survival of the institution depends on public goodwill. Senior courtiers and palace strategists understand this reality better than anyone. They know that Catherine is the crown's greatest asset. When Princess Catherine took a stand at the state banquet, she was not just acting on personal instinct. She was operating from a position of supreme confidence. She knew that her public standing gave her unique leverage. Catherine understood that any open conflict between herself and Queen Camilla would ultimately play out in the court of public opinion. In that arena, Catherine's popularity makes her practically invulnerable. This dynamic has fundamentally changed how the palace establishment views the Princess of Wales. In past generations, a junior royal would never dare to challenge the Queen Consort. To do so would mean career destruction for palace staff and severe isolation for the royal involved. But today, the rules have changed. Palace courtiers are pragmatic people. They pay close attention to media sentiment, public polls, and international perception. They see where the future lies. They observe the massive crowds that gather whenever William and Catherine travel. They note the overwhelming enthusiasm from younger generations toward the Prince and Princess of Wales. As a result, senior advisors and household officials are quietly shifting their allegiance. They still show formal respect to Queen Camilla. They carry out her daily requests with professionalism. But when major strategic decisions are being made, they increasingly look toward William and Catherine for direction. This shift in strategic authority was on full display during the state dinner. When the chief usher chose to follow Catherine's command over Camilla's direct order, he was making a calculated career assessment. He realized that aligning with Catherine was the wiser, safer, and more forward-looking choice. Catherine's soft influence has accomplished what formal protocol could never achieve. She has proven that leadership in the modern royal family is defined by public trust, emotional intelligence, and strategic vision. The old hierarchy remains on paper, but the real influence has already passed to the future queen. Palace fallout and courtiers, shifting allegiances. Dawn broke over London the morning after the state banquet. The gilded ballroom was completely silent. The heavy crystal chandeliers were turned off. But inside the private offices of Buckingham Palace, lights burned bright through the early morning hours. The palace communications team was operating in complete crisis mode. Phone lines were ringing continuously. Senior royal journalists were asking urgent, pointed questions. Whispers of the tense standoff at the head table had already reached key media figures outside the palace walls. Aides were desperate to control the emerging narrative. They understood the extreme danger of a public power struggle between the Queen Consort and the Princess of Wales. Royal communication strategists gathered in an emergency briefing room. Their objective was urgent and straightforward. They needed to frame the event as a seamless, carefully coordinated gesture of royal hospitality. They wanted the world to believe that Catherine's action was a pre-arranged protocol adaptation supported by the entire royal family. Draft statements were written, edited, and discarded within minutes. Senior press officers debated the impact of every single word. If they acknowledged a disagreement, they would validate reports of a bitter rift at the highest level. If they denied the incident entirely, they would appear completely detached from reality. Too many influential foreign dignitaries had witnessed the 5-second standoff firsthand. Too many diplomatic eyes had seen the quiet clash of wills. Ultimately, the communications team released a brief, carefully guarded response. They highlighted the overall diplomatic success of the evening. They praised the warmth shown to visiting delegates. They noted that minor routine adjustments are occasionally made to ensure foreign guest comfort during long state occasions. They firmly dismissed rumors of internal friction as baseless speculation. Behind those polished press statements, however, the mood inside the palace was far from calm. A quiet, intense Cold War erupted between the Queen's private office and the princess's administrative team. Queen Camilla's aides were deeply alarmed. They felt that Catherine's direct countercommand had fundamentally eroded the authority of the Queen Consort. They argued that if junior royals can override official directives at public functions, the strict hierarchy of the royal household will inevitably collapse. Official memos were exchanged between departments. Firm reminders regarding the chain of command were quietly distributed to household staff. Camilla's senior private secretary requested an immediate formal review of state event procedures. They demanded explicit guidelines reaffirming the Queen Consort's ultimate authority over all household functions. They wanted to ensure that no future deviations from the schedule could occur without explicit prior approval from the Queen's office. Catherine's team, however, held their ground with quiet confidence. Her advisors remained firm. They pointed out that Catherine's intervention had saved the crown from severe international criticism. They argued that forcing a distressed guest to march through grand corridors would have caused immense embarrassment to a key diplomatic ally. Catherine's office made it clear that modern royal duty requires flexibility, warmth, and genuine human care. As details of the standoff circulated among palace personnel, a profound psychological shift took place across the royal household. Palace courtiers are remarkably skilled at evaluating power dynamics. They spend their careers monitoring subtle shifts in authority among senior family members. They know who holds the present title and who holds the long-term future. The incident at the state banquet revealed a truth that could no longer be ignored. The operational center of gravity had moved. Ushering staff, event directors, security commanders, and protocol officers began re-evaluating their daily routines. For months, many had deferred without question to Camilla's traditionalist preferences. They had followed rigid, outdated procedures to avoid her office's disapproval. But seeing the chief usher obey Catherine over Camilla changed the calculation completely. Staff members realized that Prince William and Princess Catherine were actively stepping into leadership roles. They saw that William would unhesitatingly support his wife against senior palace officials. They saw that King Charles was unwilling to publicly overrule Catherine's compassionate intervention. Quietly and discreetly, senior aides began shifting their alignment. When organizing future royal engagements, household staff started consulting Catherine's team at much earlier stages. They began seeking her input on event pacing, guest arrangements, and public interaction strategy. They recognized that cooperating with Catherine was not merely about good manners. It was the smartest move for the institution's future. The fallout from the state dinner did not destroy the monarchy. Instead, it accelerated an overdue evolution. Princess Catherine's decisive stand established a permanent precedent across the royal household. For centuries, palace regulations were absolute and unyielding. The monarch and queen consort governed household protocol with unquestioned authority. Visitors, staff, and junior royals were expected to yield to the schedule without hesitation. But Catherine proved that a contemporary constitutional monarchy cannot thrive on rigid rules alone. In the weeks that followed, subtle updates began appearing in official palace planning manuals. Event schedules were adjusted to include built-in rest periods. Protocol officers were granted explicit authority to prioritize guest welfare over strict timelines. Catherine's empathetic approach became the standard model for palace hospitality. Queen Camilla was forced to adapt to this new dynamic. She realized that attempting to penalize Catherine or enforce rigid control would only isolate her office further. The queen consort chose to preserve harmony by quietly approving the updated operational guidelines. The power shift was complete. Catherine had not seized authority through angry outbursts or public drama. She had claimed it through serenity, flawless judgment, and firm commitment to principle. Courtiers no longer viewed Catherine merely as the wife of the heir. They viewed her as the second architect of the modern crown. The quiet revolution that began with a 5-second standoff at a state banquet had permanently redefined the future of the British monarchy. A new dawn for the monarchy. The silent standoff at Buckingham Palace was much more than a brief diplomatic disagreement. It was a historic turning point for the British monarchy. For centuries, the royal family survived by enforcing rigid hierarchy. Rules were sacred. Decrees from the sovereign were absolute. But the modern world has changed dramatically. The expectations of the public have evolved. Today, people demand warmth, empathy, and genuine human connection from their leaders. Princess Catherine understands this fundamental truth better than anyone else inside the royal household. Her decisive action at the state banquet signaled the arrival of a new era. It demonstrated that ancient rules must yield to common sense and human kindness. The House of Windsor is undergoing a quiet but profound transformation. Queen Camilla represents the final chapter of the old royal guard. Her understanding of duty was forged in traditional palace culture. She believes that authority is protected through distance, strict order, and unyielding protocol. For Camilla, every rule is a fortress wall that protects the majesty of the crown. But Princess Catherine sees those same walls as barriers between the monarchy and the public. Catherine was raised outside the palace system. She brings a fresh, modern perspective to her royal duties. She knows that modern authority cannot be demanded through formal titles. It must be earned through daily service, compassionate action, and strategic wisdom. When Catherine countermanded Camilla's order, she was defending a modern vision for the institution. This clash highlighted a fundamental shift in where true power resides. In a modern constitutional monarchy, real power does not flow from ancient crowns or formal titles. Real power flows from public trust. Without the affection and support of the public, royal titles lose their meaning. Princess Catherine is the most popular member of the royal family. Her popularity provides her with massive institutional leverage. Senior advisors and palace officials recognize that Catherine is essential to the survival of the crown. They see that her global appeal anchors the monarchy's future. When palace staff chose to follow Catherine's command, they were acknowledging where true authority lies. They were choosing the future over the past. Prince William's role in this transition cannot be overstated. By supporting his wife at the banquet table, William made a firm statement about his future reign. He made it clear that he and Catherine will govern as equal partners. They will not allow outdated palace traditions to compromise their core values. William has watched his father survive complex personal and political challenges for decades. He is determined to build a modern, streamlined, and empathetic monarchy. William's subtle nod to the chief usher was a declaration of strength. It showed that the Prince and Princess of Wales are prepared to lead right now. They are actively shaping the culture of the royal household. King Charles III finds himself presiding over a monarchy in transition. He respects traditional protocol, but he also recognizes the reality of the 21st century. Charles knows that his reign represents a bridge between two eras. His primary goal is to pass a stable, popular institution to his son. By allowing Catherine's decision to stand, Charles demonstrated pragmatic wisdom. He chose long-term institutional stability over short-term protocol enforcement. The king understood that Catherine had saved the crown from a potential diplomatic scandal. His quiet acceptance of her authority signaled a passing of the torch. It was a subtle acknowledgement that the future of the firm rests in the hands of William and Catherine. Princess Catherine's soft revolution has forever altered the royal landscape. She did not raise her voice. She did not demand headlines. She simply stepped forward when leadership was required. Her calm confidence at the state dinner showed that she possesses the supreme poise of a future queen. She demonstrated that leadership is not about enforcing strict schedules. Leadership is about caring for people, protecting diplomatic relationships, and acting with moral clarity. The quiet power shift that began in the grand ballroom of Buckingham Palace is complete. A new dawn has arrived for the British monarchy. Princess Catherine has proven that she is ready to wear the crown. Princess Catherine's decisive stand at the state banquet proved that modern empathy triumphs over cold protocol. She showed the world that she is ready to lead as Britain's future queen. Real power inside the royal family has shifted forever. The future of the British monarchy has arrived, and it belongs to William and Catherine. What do you think about Princess Catherine overriding Queen Camilla's orders? Did she save the diplomatic evening, or did she cross a line in the royal hierarchy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive royal insights. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.